We have to stop lying to the people of this country, economically, politically.
Raila will not get the AUC position.
Why?
But William Ruto will say, oh, you know, simuliona mimi nilijaribu. Sinajua tulipanga kupeleka mzee nini, almost sound like a basa.
One of the things that's going to fail Mr. Odinga is these ambassadors in Africa who have been given these plum jobs because they helped UDA. And they have no idea about lobbying. They could hardly speak the English language. Forget about French.
Do you think Raila will not get the AUC seat?
No, he won't. He's not even qualified. The Djibouti guy will beat Raila. We see a president who is not even accounting for us his promises of 2022, going around campaigning about 2027, and of course capturing a man who has a political constituency that can actually disrupt parliament, because that's what President William Ruto is actually doing. President William Ruto, maybe in his wisdom or lack of it, decided that, you know, for me to sit comfortable, I need to bring in Raila Odinga, because Raila Odinga has sycophantic following. So let me bring him so that, and by the way, he's not being honest to Raila, because Raila will not get the AUC position.
Why?
But William Ruto will say, oh, you know, simuliona mimi nilijaribu. Sinajua tulipanga kupeleka mzee nini, almost sound like a basa. So simunajua ama namna gani, my friends, simunajua tulipanga.
So you think he will not get the AUC?
Lakini sio mimi nilikata. So and that will be his argument, man.
So you think Raila will not get the AUC seat?
No, he won't. He's not even qualified.
Okay.
Look at the qualifications. For you to be a chair of AUC, I know it is a designated position, for the Eastern African region.
Yes.
Yeah, it is East African region, but in terms of qualification, it doesn't. The Djibouti guy will beat Raila, and let me tell you, I'm making a political prophecy, and I hope you can invite me when the election is done. It won't happen. Baba ataoshwa. In fact, as they say, as you say in the Luo, they will nango Baba.
The campaigns have started. The elections are going to be in February. Raila, he's campaigning.
Yeah.
And he has been campaigning.
And what is your prophecy?
And I think Raila has his own networks in Africa, away from even Kenyan government. I have been with him to West Africa, and I can attest to that.
Okay. And
I think it is not prudent for you to say that because of one or two things that Raila is going to lose.
So in your
Let
view?
us all support Raila, because if Raila wins, it's not Raila winning. Okay. It is Kenya winning. Well, my position is that Raila is going to put in his very best. He's going to lobby around. He's has already lobbied a number of countries, and is continuing to lobby many countries. Yeah. And I think Raila is going to win this AU position.
Kenya is multi-aligned, and Kenya strive to remain neutral, or at least vague, on some of the landmine issues. Morocco, during Amina's time, Morocco was really a pariah or a foster. Actually, it wasn't even a member, I think. But things have changed. Morocco has kind of reinserted itself, and it is a very strong member of AU at this point, which I think will support Kenya. But generally, I don't see Kenya coming very strongly on some of those issues. For example, Ethiopia-Somali issue, Rwanda, DRC issue, because it's not necessary. I think that we are at the golden age of Kenya foreign policy. You have heard that there is an agreement that to have an AU leadership, we must have rotation. And therefore, the dynamics like Francophone and whatever might not play exactly this time because of that arrangement, which is strong arrangement. And you can see that clearly for the East African region, Raila becomes the candidate. Officially launched by the East African president and taken over by the East African. I think that Kenya role, if you look at even the Kenya hosting the UN in Africa, the only country that hosts a lot of UN officers, you see Kenya relationship with the EU, you see Kenya relationship with America, Kenya relationship with China. You know that China, the BRICS, is actually, the BRICS is China. And you know that South Africa is a core ally of China. So when you see South Africa possibility of endorsing Raila, then you know very well that China faction probably can rally behind this candidate. So for those issues, you know, Kenya has generally tried to play a strategic neutrality on some of these very divisive issues. It has attempted to historically. Right now, I think that our foreign affairs are personality driven. Mm-hmm. You know that Kenya has reinserted itself as the champion of African place in climate change. You know the conferences that Kenya has hosted. It has reinserted itself as almost one of the lead nation, and that is very different from how President Uhuru and Kibaki ran foreign affairs. So when you look at the Raila candidacy, the issue of Gen Z and all that, you know that it's the states voting. So they might have sentiments, mm-hmm. but it's not a referendum or it's not a popular vote. It's the states and the statecrafts that are voting. And it's painful to see their loss at this point. It's more of the despair that Raila has abandoned them. But you can also flip that argument that Raila is moving out to the AU after fixing and assuring peace in his own country.
Patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. And I think that we should not be given any kind of scoundrelism today because we know the political economy of this country. The transformation that 80% of the people of this country wanted in this country has been blunted by the ethnic pact, elite compacting of ethnic groups by Mr. Ruto and Mr. Odinga. And to stabilize this country, it is not Mr. Odinga's joining of government. It's the government has been abducting people from the streets. The leadership of the Gen Zs in jail. Some of them have disappeared. There is massive extrajudicial killings in this country. The right to protest has been met with police action, where the city and all the other cities have been cordoned off. The government is paying hoodlums and thugs to destroy this protest in a way to thwart the constitution of this country. Mm-hmm. I put it to you, Ayub, that this compacting of ethnic groups in that coalition is not going to last. And Mr. Odinga is going to be back to this country whether or not he wins, in my view, is going to lose the AU. Because the fragility of this country has never been more fragile since independence than it is today. The president is unable to govern this country at all.
President Ruto articulated, as you said clearly, whether you believe the action that followed or not, that he kind of articulated the unfair system of the international financial market and all that, the exclusivity and the issue that the pendulum swing towards those other big nations, that the strong always have their way, which is realism. Mm-hmm. Isn't that the reason why they are putting on this very important vehicle of Raila chairing, so that with that aligned and with that vehicle in place, then we have institutional structures. And that came out yesterday, that the people who have been going there for the sake of job. We need somebody seasoned, convicted, and we need somebody who is so clear on what Africa needs to do. So that I look at this as a very important piece in asserting the place of Africa. As you know that 60% of arable land is in Africa and all that. But now you ask me about the multipolar world that he was talking about, that the balance of power has shifted or is shifting. I agree. But look, you know, it was in May this year that Kenya hosted something about China. It was there. And then a month later, it did something about the America Chamber of Commerce. Kenya have a relationship with the EU very strong, and is one of the countries that have been picked as the people they are working with. Kenya have a very good relationship with the UAE and all these other emerging powers in terms of business. As you have noted, that if you look at the BRICS, BRICS is really China, because Russia is engulfed in their serious wars. And that China, if you see South Africa in, you know very well, if you are a student of BRICS, that China has arrived. Now, when you look at all that network, then clearly you can see that the aggressive articulation of African issue, from climate change to the unfair financing to the advantage Kenya has in terms of technology and the skills that Kenya is readily offering, to being the center. You can see that they are all harnessing towards Raila's candidacy. What you see as hesitation is more of the whole idea of unfairness, that people feel that, and sometimes I feel the same.
Yes.
We were in the middle of something, and Raila just moved to fix this, not at micro level, but at macro level. Because if he gets to the AU, he will fix the unfair. He brought the point, and you were there. I saw you. That the idea that we are negotiating with this power bilaterally is the source of our weakness. We need a multilateral approach. Where can that be done except by AU?
My view is, and it's, you know, when you come to the medium of the public, we speak in the interest of the public. I have my own political views. Of course, they're going to show up in what I say. But the most important thing is to take the public seriously, and that the public is able to understand the things that are going on. We have to speak to them in an educated way. You know, we can't speak to them in a way that is of low standard. So my view on this is that there is no question in my mind that I think Mr. Ruto and Mr. Raila have something up their sleeves. And I think that this AU issue is a stopgap. I think the major elephant or the whale in the room is the 2027 elections.
Okay.
And there are two competing, I don't like the word narrative, there are two competing discourses. And one discourse is the status quo, business as usual. Now, Mr. Odinga went through the election, and I believe the elections were taken away from us by some powers. And then there were demonstrations in this country, which a lot of people lost their lives.
Who are the powers who are taken?
Well, I can't, it would be irresponsible for me to just say those things on national television.
Yeah.
But
many will not agree with you, because it's a matter settled by the Supreme Court.
It's already been settled by the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court, just as the AU and everybody else, they're not in a vacuum. It's very important for our country to be stable. But we cannot drink the olive oil of evil things to make the country stable. The most important thing in making the country stable is to find some form of political justice, some form of economic justice, and some form of a legitimate, independent way in which our country can function. And that's not happening. Secondly, I put it to you, Ayub, I think that the president and the former prime minister are cooking up a constitutional way in which they can share power in 2027. And I think that the issue of the prime minister is going to come up within a year, I predict, and you can hold me responsible for this. And I think that this AU thing is a stopgap, because I think that if Mr. Odinga loses the AU, the president has another opportunity to stand up to Kenya and say, I beat Mr. Odinga by 200,000 votes. We want a government of national coalition to stabilize this country. And therefore, we need a constitutional agreement so that the former prime minister can come back and share this government. Mr. Odinga is not going to stay out of government in Kenya. I can guarantee you that. And I think you should hold me responsible for my comments within the next 8 months to 1 year. Lastly, Mr. Ayub, and I think that the Kenyan people have now grown very wise, because this issue of nusu mkate every other electoral cycle makes nonsense of our electoral democracy. And the president used to call him mutu ya kitendawili, na hakuna nusu mkate. President lied to this country. I mean, I didn't say it. It's in the public record. I mean, we should call him out on it. And I think that we have to stop lying to the people of this country, economically, politically, and sociologically. And I think the Gen Zs are our hope. And I hope that they form their political party and they can sweep these fellows to the dustbin of history come election day.
The elections in February will be a matter for the 54 countries. Mr. Odinga will need 2/3 of the vote of these 54 to make it. We certainly cannot ignore the influence of the French, and the French have had their tentacles in Africa for the longest time ever. The French are reeling from the losses in the Sahel. Domestically, Macron will want to show the French public that we are not losing our jewels around the world. Correct. There's been unrest in Caledonia, Martinique, the Sahel. The new young leaders are coming in and quote-unquote tamping their noses
Even
at their
in France itself there's been...
Yes. The far right is rising in France.
Yeah.
So Macron will want to settle this so that they have somebody who will be friendly to French interests. So anybody who is organizing Mr. Odinga's candidature has to be alive to the influence of the French. Then another key player in all this is Vladimir Putin and the Russians. They are heavily invested in the Sahel. They're actively protecting those coup regimes in that belt. You cannot secure the support of these countries in the Sahel, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, without talking to Vladimir Putin. So every vote counts. And this points to the requirement for us domestically that moving forward, we need to think of how we run our diplomacy. We cannot be ad hoc, we cannot be reactionary. Kenya needs the very best in terms of who represents us out there.
All right.
Kenya needs to create friendships with our neighbors here. Africa, the African diplomatic corps here, that's our primary constituency.
One of the things that's going to fail Mr. Odinga is these ambassadors in Africa who have been given these plum jobs because they helped UDA. And they have no idea about lobbying. They could hardly speak the English language. Forget about French. If I were to advise Mr. Odinga today, I would say that he should fire his secretariat, call the governor of Kisumu, Mr. Anyang' Nyong'o, give him the power to constitute a team to go to Addis Ababa, and I think if he does that, Mr. Odinga will have a chance. But if he goes with these fellows I've seen in the secretariat here, he's not even going to pass the first round. Sorry.
See what Djibouti has done and Kenya has not learnt over the years. Djibouti has strategically placed itself as the ideal neutral. How many military bases do we have in Djibouti? Around 8.
Yeah.
Everybody speaking about security matters in the region has to consult Djibouti. That is one advantage that plays to their hand. Now, in terms of the French influence, remember the AU is largely funded by the European Union. One of the principal backers financially for the European Union is the French government. So there are many cards that the French can play, including playing the financial card. We are not going to do ABCD unless this happens. So France is not bereft of the cards it can play. It still has allies within Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, other countries, French-speaking countries. Senegal is dancing in the middle, but it can still be relied on. We need to talk to those people. In terms of the diplomats, the people we are sending out there, and as Hashi correctly says, where is Ambassador Mencha in all this? Ambassador Mencha has been a bureaucrat within the AU circles. Certainly he has his knowledge and reach.
And me.
We have Hashi here. He has his role he's played. He certainly knows a couple of things. Why don't you bring in such people who will tell you the truth? Because if you bring in people who will be there for the glitz and the glamour, they will not get you the results.
If you're a friend of the United States, it's very dangerous. But if you're, an ally, your situation is fatal. We never know what the Americans are going to do and how they're going to do it. But we can make an assessment about what they will support because of the ideological, economic, and political situation the world is in right now. Secondly, the Global South. And the Global South is another very important institution that's coming up in international relations. And of course, our president made another mistake when he went to Ukraine. And he just blasted the Russians over Ukraine, where he should have played the game of being a negotiator who tried to bring people together. Mr. Ruto has put his lot with the West, and the West kicked him in where the sun doesn't shine. And part of the problems we have in this country is this closeness he has to the West and the reaction of the other groups of powerful institutions and countries and states around the world. So that's the second point. The third point is that how is that going to play in the AU? I firmly believe that the European Union, and which the French have huge influence over, the core of the European Union is the alliance between Germany and France. Now, I can tell you the Germans are going to help Mr. Odinga because the Germans are very close to...
Speaks the language.
Yeah, he speaks the language, etc.
Went to school.
You saw the ambassador come to his office the other day. But when it comes to Africa, the French have a very high leverage. And the Americans, the French are an ally of the Americans within NATO. Now, the question at the core of this is that's a very sad story that we as Africans are speaking about how the West and the East control our politics. It's a sad commentary about what's happening. Okay. The second thing is that I think that Mr. Odinga would make a very good African Union chairman. I've been his close aide for a very long time. I think that he is the best politician of his generation. What Kenyans feel about Mr. Odinga is this sense that there's a betrayal of Mr. Odinga at the very moment that we reach the gates of transformation in this country. Mr. Odinga walked there naked and everybody could see who he was and that he supported the status quo. He was part of the ethnic configuration and he did not support the popular national transformation that 80% of the people in this country, and everybody is extremely sad about it, including me. Lastly, I put it to you, Mr. Ayub, that there is a line in Shakespeare. Mr. Odinga calls himself a lion. You remember saying he's the lion of Africa. There's a line in Shakespeare that said that now in the winter of our discontent, made glorious by the son of York. So I think it's in Hamlet. I think that the lion is in winter now. And I don't think that lion is going to go and bite anything at the AU. I think that Kenya is going to be in for a shock. And I think you should hold me responsible for my comments the next time I come.
I will tell you,
and you should put it on the TV, because I predicted bigger things than this.
The deals are usually made behind the scenes. So in diplomacy, let us not forget those social items like language, religion, those count. So whoever is in charge of this campaign needs to be cognizant of that, because this Djibouti candidate has those advantages, and those advantages may come and become a problem for us, like it was with the Ambassador Amina candidature. What we need to do, and this has been our underbelly as Kenya, we are very big at rhetoric. We come, buzz, social media, say a lot of things, but what are the structures? For me as a lawyer, I'm keen on the structures. That is why I keep on harping the need for us to have competent people to do things behind the scenes. We have career ambassadors in this country, people who speak multiple languages, people who can serve
Yep.
in various capacities in this country. What have we done with those career ambassadors? We have made them sit in offices. They are not serving the country. What benefit will a political failure do for us at this moment? You want to send an ambassador who cannot speak French to DRC Congo and speak to the president there over this candidature. The language barrier, of course, will become a problem. The personal connections.
Okay.
We've had Ambassador Sumbewo do a lot of good for this country with the South Sudan issue because of the personal connections. If you send somebody else who doesn't have the attributes of Ambassador Sumbewo to the Sudan, you're going to have a problem. And of course, the president, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, moving forward and for future campaigns, let us sit in the middle. Let us run our diplomacy from the middle.
Thank you.
We don't need to show a hand.
Thank you.